Hi, welcome to this revision guide for section B of the component 3 drama and theatre studies written exam. We're focusing on Machinal for our section B part of the exam, and this is called page to stage. So what does the spec say about this section? So this is the section where you get an unseen extract and you don't have the whole play in front of you, you just get given that little bit of the play to focus on. Now the spec says that the extracts will normally be between 80 to 110 lines long. Now just for context, a general page in Machinal is about 20 to 25 lines long. So you're looking at between 4 and 5 pages for your unseen extract. In the scripts that you have, there are 2 pages per sheet of A4. So you're looking at between 2 to 3 sides of A4 that you'll be focusing on. The first thing you do in the exam when you get that extract is you identify about 6 or 7 key moments from that extract that you're going to be writing on. So here we have it, Machinal by Sophie Treadwell. That's the play that we're focusing on, and that's the extract that you'll get in your exam. So, knowledge and understanding, this is what the exam board want you to show them that you know when you're answering this question. They want your ideas to be creative, first of all. So we talk about going beyond and writing a sophisticated answer. And this refers to that idea of creative decisions. So there are the things that are said in those 80 to 110 lines, but what's the subtext of this part of the play? What's going on beneath the lines? And how can you show that as the actor or the designer? That's what that creativity is alluding to there. Second of all, explore in depth the ways in which theatre makers collaborate and create theatre by understanding how performers and designers use dramatic elements to communicate meaning and ideas to the audience. Dramatic elements is just referring to our key terminology, all the things that we do in order to create a scene. So do you understand how the performer might interact with the designer in order to create meaning? Now, you get those questions separately in the exam, but it might be that you want to reference in your answer a couple of times, say, for example, in the actor question, how they might interact with something else on stage. So if they're walking downstage right, are they standing up or are they sitting down in a chair? Are they walking to a dimly lit part of the stage? You don't want to go into loads of detail on the design in an actor question because you're not marked on it. But do you understand how the performer might collaborate with the other elements of the theatre making process in order to create more meaning in that moment? It might be, for example, that she's wearing a hat and she takes it off. That's the performer collaborating with the costume there. Similarly, with your design answers, do you have an awareness of what the actors on stage are going to be doing and how that will work with your design as well? You don't want to be going into loads of detail in terms of the vocality of the actor in that moment or their gestures or anything like that. But do you know how that actor is interacting with that design element? Next up, production values and making clear choices about how a performance text might be realised in performance. So do you have clear ideas? Have you got a plan together of how this will look? And what is the production value of this? Is this going to be a highly technical performance? Is it going to be stripped back and a bit more subtle? What do you want to do with it? An understanding of how language, genre, form, and characterization might be explored in this performance. So this is an expressionist style performance. At times it can feel a bit like a thriller. It's quite intense. Mostly we're using dialogue, stichomythia with that short, snappy dialogue quite a lot of the time. But the young woman's really the only person who gets long monologues. Now, if you have that in your extract, are you aware of how you want to make a difference with that moment where she speaks for a longer period of time? And in contrast, do you know how you want to perform those short, snappy bits of dialogue? For example, in episode 1, the dialogue essentially merges with the sound design. So we have people and the sound design creating this mechanical world audibly. So that would be an example of how the form is being used. Understanding the characters as well and understanding the motivations behind the characters will influence the decisions you make around vocality and physicality and the use of stage space as well. And we also want to see that impacting on the design, particularly costume. Next, considering how elements might be used to communicate meaning to an audience. There are not, we wouldn't use all of these elements. You're unlikely to use a lot of puppetry. It might be something you want to consider in terms of having the young woman almost like a puppet on string. But it's not expected that you would use all of this in your performance in order to achieve full marks. But these are things that you would want to consider. Certainly, the use of the space, set, staging, lighting, and sound, and the performance of the actors and the costume are things that you want to consider. And then finally, as always, our subject-specific terminology. Going back to those Machinal slides and making sure that you have that key terminology very securely understood and able to use in sentences without fear. And then finally, they're looking for you to apply the following skills: responding to texts imaginatively, exploring how you could convey ideas in an imaginative way. So really letting your imagination run wild when you're talking about that, how you would show things to the audience. Often in the actor question, they will specify around these 4 ideas. So it might be that you're asked to just talk about voice or movement or staging or characterization. Staging would be where on the stage the actors are stood at any given time and where they would go to and from and that kind of thing. So that's really what they're looking for from you. It's important that you know your subject terminology, and it's really important that you have an idea episode by episode of what you would do for the actors and from the design perspective. And my other video on Machinal goes into a bit more detail on how to prepare those ideas. Thank you.